It's a great thing to be able to now see that the Sadhya is so popular and it just draws such big crowds. But when you say Malayalis understand the Sadhya, but sometimes they were the biggest problem because a Sadhya, like in Kerala, you go north to south, the Sadhya varies.
There is, absolutely.
The way they serve it, the way they eat it.
It also helped that the Sadhya is there's a fair amount of tableside drama, no? It's
Exactly.
It's happening on the scene. It's also very colorful. There's a lot of color,
A lot of activity.
a lot of action. There's a lot of. I'm just going to throw you a couple of ingredients quickly. First thing that comes to your mind.
As long as you don't ask me to cook.
No, yeah, but what would you cook, right? Like in this imaginary world, you can't cook it. What would it be, right? So I'll start with an easy one. Tamarind. Quick one.
Well, it would be sambar, I guess, or rasam.
Okay. Coconut.
I'll go back to Kala.
Salad.
Yeah.
Raw mango.
It'll be
Hi there and welcome to the PODIcast. My name is Fenn. I am the owner of Belly, a Kerala cuisine restaurant right here in Delhi, and I will be your host as we take you through the food and happenings of my favorite region in India, which is the South. My guest today is Chef Arun Kumar, who's also an author now. Chef Arun Kumar, hi. Well, welcome, and thank you for being here. Just a quick little introduction on who and what Chef Arun is. Chef Arun Kumar dons many hats. He has studied English literature at St. Stephen's College, which also happens to be the college that I went to. So we share similar stories in that we came to Delhi to study and we never left. He then went on to do journalism with the Times of India for a good 8 years. He was a film critic and a journalist before getting into shooting for
films,
documentaries, and the like. But what has stayed consistent in all of this is what he does now, which is that he's a full-fledged chef. He's an award-winning chef. He has done large caterings. He has he's been the brand chef for a very successful restaurant in Delhi, which you might know, still in Delhi, called Zambar. Chef Arun is also the author of Feast on a Leaf, which is an edition on the Onam Sadhya, one of the most famous meals that comes out of Kerala. Thank you for being with us today, Chef. It's great to have you here and to speak about Kerala and all the foods that it has to offer. I'd like to begin with actually a personal memory. This is way before we've actually met.
Yeah.
The Onam Sadhya at Zambar was actually the first Sadhya that I paid for. Till that point, it was, you've eaten a lot of it in Kerala, of course. And we used to host at Stephen's also. Onam was a big thing because of the huge Malayali population over there.
That's right.
So Onam for us in college was basically being part of that. We would come together, we would have hired a caterer from outside. So after leaving college, obviously that was not an option. Going back to college for the Sadhya was not an option. So I remember Zambar, we had to wait for a very long time. This was in Cyber Hub in Gurgaon, but totally worth it. Little did I know that much later on, that we would also be
We would be part of
we would be part of the Onam Sadhya menu serving into the city of Delhi. So my actual earliest memory of you was as the chef who actually brought it in.
It's very interesting because, when you talk about it being your first Sadhya for which you paid for, when we started the Sadhya at Zambar, it was quite a challenge. Now it's become very easy for all restaurants to be able to replicate. And, you have clientele who are willing to come and, pay and eat us for a Sadhya. It took a lot of time. In fact, I think it took the first 2 years before we settled into Sadhya, which we were happy about. Because initially there was the problem of people not knowing, what to do with the leaf and with all the food there, except for the Malayalis who came.
Absolutely.
And it was also a challenge with the service staff. Because as you know, most of the service staff here are from the north. And, we had put them into mundos and,
they get stuck in the chairs.
Exactly. And, where to put what, it was a big challenge. But I think by the time we were in Cyber Hub, we had kind of perfected that thing. So it's a great thing to be able to now see that the sadhya is so popular and it just draws such big crowds. And just like at your restaurant.
So I like to think that we actually rode the way that maybe you guys did with Zambar, right? So by the time we were serving the sadhya, wasn't mainstream, but there was awareness, right? Like it was awareness. And I think we overlapped at a very, very fortunate time where I felt that regional restaurants were also on the rise.
That's right.
Like we opened in 2015. There was us doing Kerala cuisine. There was Rustum's doing Parsi food.
Parsi.
There's Potbelly doing Bihari cuisine.
Right.
Generally, there was this understanding, like, we had a discerning customer who wanted to also kind of, it also helped that the sadhya is there's a fair amount of tableside drama, no? It's
Exactly.
it's happening on the scene. It's also very colorful. There's a lot of color.
A lot of activity.
A lot of action. There's a lot of. So our challenge actually, I think, like you rightly pointed out, was how do you execute the order in which it's supposed to go? And this is how do you also tell people? They also want to know, right? Like what we wanted, the story we wanted to tell, Malayalis will obviously know.
They would know.
They will know. So what we wanted to do was how do we get non-Malayalis in to eat this sadhya and kind of experience it, and how do you educate? And the fast pace of all of that, it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. Like, there's leaves flying everywhere.
Exactly, yeah. But when you say Malayalis understand the sadhya, but sometimes they were the biggest problem. Because, a sadhya, like in Kerala, you go north to south, the sadhya varies.
There is, absolutely.
The way they serve it, the way they eat it. So, there would always be customers would say, but this is not a sadhya cut. Yeah.
This is not.
So that was a challenge, but then it's okay.
I think it also helped, at least in the north of India, I think it helped that the sadhya is vegetarian.
That's
right.
Yeah.
So this is one day where if you're a vegetarian, you've got like anywhere between 20 to 25 dishes.
Yeah.
All different flavors, different flavor profiles, temperatures, textures, you name it. But great, so I think we stand on the broad shoulders, at least in Delhi, of what Zambar did.
Exactly.
To kind of
Yeah.
I wanted to begin maybe from a perspective of, you've got a very wide set of things that you've done before you actually entered the food space, right? So journalism, filmmaking, documentaries, and then regional food. Like it wasn't just any food, right? It does specifically regional food. Why? What was, can you just give me a slight little thing on what? Was it just like circumstance and you said, okay, I like this?
Yeah, it really is. I think when I was in college, I did literature and was always interested in writing. Films was a big passion. I used to watch films like a madman. And
Malayali films or?
No, a lot of international cinema and the festivals. Then, all the cultural centers had films. So, there was a lot of interest.
Access to these, like now you've
you
got
just had to be, you just had to become a member
Right.
of the cultural center. And then they would screen films every week, definitely. And that's how, one got to see international cinema. So when I left Stephens, I joined my master's, and that's when I saw this ad of Times of India asking for trainees. And in those days, it was an exam, just like you do your IAS or anything. So there were people who applied for it all over the country. And eventually they chose 40 people who then were taken to Bombay and trained. It was a godsend for me because Filmfare belongs to the Times of India brewer. So right from when I started my training, I kept going to the Filmfare office, meeting the people there, wanting to write on cinema. Halfway through my training, there was a vacancy in Filmfare, and so they just put me there. So, I got into films. Then began the rounds of Bollywood. You went for shoots, you met directors, actors, everything. Then the bug to make a film came in. And so it was after, I think, about 7-8 years at Filmfare, I just decided one day that I wanted to make a film. And literally, I kind of took leave from Filmfare. I had friends. I was doing a little bit of stage in Bombay. And that was a time when from NST, there was this huge exodus of actors who would come to Bombay, and they would perform at Prithvi, and that's where I worked for a little while. And after my office, so I got a couple of actors, got some people to help me with writing, got someone to back me. Those days, films didn't cost too much, and I made a feature film. So so it really was a plunge. It was called Agnida, and being very arty at that time, because I was watching all this international cinema and stuff like that. It was on bright burning. It was a big problem at that time in Delhi. So that was where I started. So then I just gave up. You couldn't be a filmmaker and be a film critic. It's not right.
Yes, there's a conflict of interest.
So I gave that up and I gave up film fare, and then I got into filmmaking. So initially there were corporate films, documentaries for the government. This was like the mainstay happening at that time. And slowly, I think over around 15, 20 years, I ended up by doing documentaries for Discovery, for NHK at Japan. These were feature documentaries. You spent a year, 2 years on a project, and it was very satisfying. Food was always kind of something which was in the background.
Were you always cooking through this? Like, is this something that just popped up and said that
I
doing this and why not?
No, food. I was always interested in food. I used to do a lot of cooking for units. We used to go to very remote places like in the Northeast.
Right.
We used to just set up camp and we do our shooting. So I would cook for
What would you cook?
anything that was available. Really, that was literally which would be farm to table.
Got it.
You just went to the market.
Not too many ingredients.
Yeah, and then you kind of got into it. And I would cook a lot at home for friends. And friends would always say, you have to open a restaurant. That's the thing you should do.
Were these the friends that were at the first pop-up that you did?
That's right.
In
Yeah.
2009, you said.
19. 9.
For the rest of the
2009.
viewers, Chef Arun did Delhi's first Malayali pop-up at that point in 2009, which was called Ami. It was a pan-region coastal menu.
So these were these friends who kind of pushed me and said, you should open a restaurant. It wasn't so easy to just open a restaurant. You should know that. So then we decided we'll start with a pop-up. I'd heard about pop-ups in England. I heard of these chefs who would suddenly just in somebody's garage, in some bakery,
Cook out and
just go out, call people. Yeah.
So it's a fun, I guess. Right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, a lot of adventure and all that.
So where did the formalization of that skill come from? Like in the sense, from that to a restaurant kitchen is a pretty big jump, right?
It is. So actually it was while I was doing my pop-ups that Zambar was looking for a chef who would turn Zambar around. Zambar existed, but they were not able to get the concept right. So they were looking for someone, and it was Veer Sangvi, who had been to one of my pop-ups, who just told these guys, who were Ramit Burman and Rohit Agarwal, that if you're not looking for someone from a 5-star hotel who's trained at a IHM or something like that,
gets it wrong,
but knows the food, why don't you give him a try? So I was in the middle of making a documentary for Discovery. And these people called me and they said, why don't we do a trial? And I did a trial at Vasant Kunj Zambar. And it was the first time I'd walked into a commercial kitchen.
and nothing
like what I was doing as a at home. But the thing is that once you got to the stove and the food, it just all falls into place.
Do you remember what you cooked for that trial?
In fact, it was almost everything that is there in the sadhya,
All right.
and a couple of non-vegetarian things, which was a mutton which I had learned from my grandmother, which is called Achama's lamb curry, which is what I introduced in Zambar. And now I find it in lots of places. So This was the kind. It was basically what I cooked at home, which I cooked there. And in fact, the chefs there were a little wary. They're wondering whether I would manage. Who's this? Because I wanted to know and wanted to cook it in that style, of course. That not this whole restaurant style. And halfway through the trial, Amit Burman came up to me at the kitchen and he just asked me, when can you join? So I said, listen, I have, middle of a documentary. I can't just give it up. They said, no, you finish that. But whenever you have free time, come sit at the restaurant, have a look and start working on the menu. Figure things. So that's where I think the transition was pretty easy, because I spent about 2 weeks just sitting in the restaurant, watching what is happening, going to the kitchen. And then I just fell into cooking.
Since you mentioned Nachama's lamb curry, I have this theory. I have this theory that every single person who's in the restaurant business, either owning a business or working in the kitchen, will have some childhood memory.
Yes.
Not necessarily a good one also. But they will have some childhood memory that drove them in that direction. What would be yours? Do you have something that, your earliest memory of food?
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Yeah, it's surprising actually what I always look forward to at home. I was born and brought up in Bangalore and we used to go for our vacations to Kerala, like every one day. Your summer, any other break you got, we would spend at the Taravads of our grandparents. Yeah, very close to, that's right. So we had 2 Taravads, both from my mother's side and father's side. And we'd spend our time there. And what I always look forward to were the sweets. And Payasams was just a great favorite of mine. And that was something, which kept, if you could make a good Payasam, I would always feel, you had cracked it.
What were the types that you grew up eating? Were there lots of varieties? Because when I actually started eating different kinds of Payasam, I think after I came to Delhi. At home, it was maybe one Ada Payasam and one Senior Payasam.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we didn't have any, I didn't have access to,
actually it would be the Pal Payasam, which was made every week at my place because my mother made it because my dad did a puja on every Thursday. And you wouldn't believe it, I ate the Payasam not on the Thursday night, but on the Friday morning because I loved the Payasam to be cold. The Pal Payasam especially.
Straight out of the fridge.
There was no fridge in those days. Bangalore was very cool. It was like a fridge. So it really lasted its stay. So that happened. And then the sadhyas. We would have a sadhya always at home. And I think the kind of cooking that was done at home, it was like in the evening, we children helped in the shopping. So we'd go to the local vegetable market, you picked up stuff, and then you would see your mother convert it into a meal.
Good times.
So, that was nice. So these were the things. And when you went to the Taravad, everything which was there, you went out with the, like the right-hand man of my grandmother into the orchards, into the fields, into vegetable patches. They would, pluck those things, bring it. And you found that you were actually eating what you had just brought from there and it was on your table.
Is it like lost experience? No?
Yeah, to a certain extent. But I think they've started, this entire movement, which I think is a bit exaggerated and kind of pushing it to the limits of this farm to table. Of course, there are certain places, say, now in India also, there are people who are going away to the mountains, setting up a little, kind of a patch.
It's happening in Bangalore also.
Yeah, Bangalore too. That's right.
Pretty much there.
Yeah. Right. So this is something which actually existed, which was there. It's not something that we are discovering. It's actually always been there. It's rediscovering a way of life that we live. But I guess populations increase. You cannot, kind of feed everyone from a single patch. But I think these are the early kind of memories which kind of push me in the kitchen. So I would try and stay as true to that kind of cooking, that kind of procurement, which I tried. I think quite successfully.
Was and I think with a childhood experience like that, you also set the right baseline, I guess, in terms of what that expectation is. Which brings me into my follow up. Was Delhi or like was your stint in Delhi? Did it start when you came into college or?
In fact, it was late my last couple of years in school.
Okay.
So I'd spent about 14 years in
So
Bangalore.
where I'm coming from is, for me, Delhi was a revelation food wise. Like till that point, I did all my schooling. I spent a little bit of time in the Middle East, so there was an understanding of Arab food and like the shawarma grills, and then it was Kerala throughout.
That's right.
So Delhi was actually like this
Sudden opening.
this sudden opening of like also things I had not heard about. Like absolutely, like I didn't know what art was. I didn't know a lot of things. So I want to get a sense of what that was like. Like exploring food in Delhi. I ate the first aloo paratha of my life. After I came here. So it's also kind of like a food hub in that sense, just because of how many different kinds of communities live here.
Yeah.
Also driven by region and all that.
Yeah, so it did happen. And in fact, the last couple of years that I spent in school, I had a couple of friends who were, proper North Indians, Punjabis. So apart from eating at their house, which is when I think the first time I would have eaten something like rajma. I mean, this is not something we ate in Bangalore at all. We didn't know what rajma was at home then. And then in school, the school would have vendors around on the outside. And that's when I tasted things like kulcha and chole, my introduction into charts. And thanks to these friends who were, like always every week wanted to go, have charts. So we'd go to the local market, Defense Colony, which is where we stayed. And the market is very small at that time. So that kind of food. And then things like the butter chicken and, stuff which was there, which was Punjabi, really. So that was an opening at that time. But I don't think there was so much of regional food here.
For sure.
I think the first thing which opened during my time in Woodlands was there, where you got your idli and then Sagar who opened. But I think this kind of the full kind of palette from South India, all the 4 states, and covering seafood, your meat dishes, everything, only started coming in, say, with places like Swagat, which came and kind of introduced
Is
Delhi.
coastal.
Yeah, that this was something which came, but then Swagat also, the curries didn't differ very much. You suddenly realize that you got your chicken in the same kind of curry. But still, it was a kind of
They would post the
opening
order.
out.
Yeah, post the order.
Yeah. And then I think it was these guys, Zambar, who actually introduced this idea of 4 states, because I think they took it from ITC, Dakshin. So ITC has always been a pioneer in being able to push regional. Yeah. So I think that concept of Dakshin, of getting 4 states onto your platter, was taken up by, these like pipe food guys, and they started Zambar, but they just couldn't get the act together. So I was able to, kind of establish a base for that kind of food in Delhi.
Great work.
Definitely, yeah.
Personal question. What is your favorite thing to eat and favorite thing to cook? They're usually not the same thing, I've noticed.
Yeah, one thing which is not very peculiar, I find it with lots of chefs. When I cook, I normally, I'm a very small eater of what I've cooked.
It's because of all the smells and it goes ahead.
And even at the restaurant also, after you cook,
your taste.
you went back and you had your dal, chawal and stuff like that. But I think the challenges, and that's why it remains a couple of my favorites, is something, say, like kalan. Because it was a challenge to me, because when I started making kalan, all my aunts one of my grandmothers who's alive would always, they would accept my avial, they would accept my olan. But when it came to the Kalan, there was always, and I never could kind of figure out, they would either say the yam is mushy or it's too hard, and the coconut paste is either too rough, too smooth. So the curd is not sour enough. So it took me a couple of years before I actually cracked the Kalan. So Kalan always is a
This sounds
favorite
like
of mine.
sushi making of some sort. Like
It is.
you boil the rice
So when of my
years before you actually get it.
yeah, it did take about 3 or 4 years before I actually mastered the Kalan.
So this is, I had not had the privilege to have it from your own hands actually.
Okay, next
This is
time.
probably an excellent entry point into then asking you your thoughts or motivation behind writing Feast on a Leaf, right?
Yeah.
So the Kalan's a great starting point. Like you couldn't figure it out. You finally figure out what it takes to make a grade A, awesome Kalan. But outside of that, obviously, you also want to, I imagine you also want to make Malayali food the sadhya more accessible to people that want to.
So, what happened is actually during my Zamba days when I was doing the Onam Sadhya, people ask a lot of questions. And, you have to keep answering, why a Sadhya and is it done? Why is it done? Is it only for Onam? Various questions. So always at the back of my mind, I would keep thinking, we had to make some kind of a guide for the Sadhya, which we did at Zamba. But that was like a quick guide. What is there? What are the dishes?
With description.
Yeah, but not a kind of background to the entire Sadhya. So later, I think when I have kind of run through, had my fill of being a chef, done catering quite successfully for a long time, I just decided, and there were people who were telling me, why don't you write a book? And I think the first thing that struck me was Onam. And I went back to Kerala, checked, and there were no books which actually covered Onam from A to Z.
Specifically,
So I decided to go into it. My publisher said, fine. And so for a year, I just spent my time going up and down to Kerala and trying to talk to people, understanding what went behind the Sadhya and what went behind the festival also, which is described in the book.
And in this process, do you think at this point you've cooked thousands of satyas, right? Like you've done 1,000 Kalins, 1,000 Injipulis, and all that. But by writing this book, did you maybe discover something that you did not know just by way of having to?
I think having talked to lots of people and gone into a certain amount of science behind the Sadhya, the things that I learned when I did the book was about textures.
Right.
When we serve from the tail end of the leaf upwards, I realized that when it was traditionally done, all the non-gravy ones would come initially and the consistency changes as you go to, if I'm eating to my right, it starts getting, your Olan comes just literally at the end. And the Olan is the one which flows, and then the sambar comes. And this is something I learned. Textures, from something, there's so much coconut used in it, in the sadhya. Coconut made into a paste. How, between the avial, the kalan, texture of the grinding varies. So I met these old people in Kerala and Sadhya, and they would, say, we would just do that. So, and what it meant actually, why? Because when you eat it, you realize, even though it is a coconut paste, the texture, the flavor that you actually take in is very different.
You think that what you're also describing is you needed that person telling you that, look, that Kalan's not on point.
Yeah.
Right? So
definitely.
What at least when we've started where we kind of did these Sadhyas with Mahabali and all, over a period of time, I felt that it became also so mainstream.
Yeah.
That we were starting to lose discerning customers like that. Who was also able to say that, look, this is hard work, not just because we're able to produce at such.
Yeah.
It's also hard work in terms of the kind of effort that goes into cooking these things. individually, which brought me to this. So you speak about, in the book, you speak about modern and traditional sadhya, right? Could you like help me understand what that distinction is between modern and
You know, basically modern for me was because I wanted the sadhya to be more accessible to people. You know, like if you're just a family, two people, you just have a child, or you're just a couple, or, you know, you've just called one person, two people. You know, this idea of making all the 24, 20 plus dishes doesn't really make sense, you know, because two people sitting and eating, you're not going to be, you know, the serving bit of it. So I realized that a sadhya didn't have to really that be that entire leaf with 20 plus dishes. You could have the same feel, the same kind of uh, flavors that you kind of
the sadhya
get. Yeah. So that's why I decided that what I call the modern sadhya is to be able to do a sadhya for 2, for 4, for 6, 8, or then do the full-fledged sadhya.
With wisdom,
So,
what is actually the number of dishes that is on a?
you know, this is something which
I haven't found this out.
yeah, I don't think anyone would be able to give you.
Or is there a minimum? Let me ask that. Is there a minimum?
See, I can tell you, yeah, you know, because when I have earlier, having spoken to my grandmother and things like that, you know, we say no matter what it is, whether a person can afford a sadhya or not, he would have a sadhya for Onam. So, you know, like I've quoted that in the book too. So what happens? Uh, Basically, you're having a little bit of a celebration for Onam. So what I figured out is what we call Nalakuta Satya.
4 kutans, by the way.
Yeah. So it's for basically 4 items would make your Satya.
Right.
So beyond that, what you're doing,
Is opulence.
yeah, it is.
Is business.
And so I think when you decide if you don't want to kind of replicate, say you don't want to have 2 pachadis, just have one toran. You know, why have 4 torans? Have one toran, one pachdi, you have your kalan, olan, erisheri. You don't have to go. But when you put that, you put the chips and everything together, it'll come to a count of between 16 to 20. And I would think that would be the ideal count for a satya.
Got it.
With your pickle, your relish,
It's about 20.
you know, yeah, that's around. Anything that is done is a duplication of a
Principle.
dish which is already there.
And what would
Yeah.
be your? I ask this to people who either. What would be your favorite dish on the, hard to pick, but on the sadhya?
So it's again, you know, it's like I say to the book also, connoisseurs of a sadhya, when the sadhya is served, when the kalan is served, you would find they would dip their finger into it and taste. That is like telling you whether the sadhya has been done properly or not. So kalan would be my kind of touchstones for a sadhya.
That's the one. That's the one that
Yeah,
build the camel.
it is.
Is the one that built the camel. Yeah. When can we expect you to? Do you think you'll open another restaurant, or do you think you'll get back to it? Do you think?
No, I think I'm moving on in terms of a restaurant or anything. You know, I do small kind of stints at places where I just kind of consult and kind of hold the kitchen together
Got it.
and curate the menu from the south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the good.
I don't do anything else commercially, though at home I do a lot of other cooking. So that is something that I'll continue. And I want to delve deeper and deeper into not just Kerala, the South as a whole, but initially now Kerala has like become my focal point. And to be able to figure out there's a lot more to the cuisine from there. You know, we have got stuck in a rut where we believe that this is Kerala food. It's not. You know, actually, when you travel north to south, and especially, you know, the little time that I've spent in Wayanad with some of the tribals and things like that, you're not only seeing the origin of certain dishes, but actually what the dish needs to be. So I think that's where my concentration is. A restaurant, I don't think I'll ever open a restaurant. it's a young man's job.
It is a sure.
Yeah. So I think
his prey has lost all my health. So
that's it.
yeah. No, and also what happens in a restaurant, right? Since you mentioned like how deep Kerala is in itself, you could write cookbook after cookbook. You could open restaurant after restaurant just on micro regions in Kerala.
Absolutely.
Something that we've not been able to do as a restaurant, as a Kerala cuisine restaurant, is that ultimately you also have to make a commercial call.
You have to. Yeah.
You have to make a comment on what actually sells, and what actually sells is like a cross section of what do people like from a flavor profile. They might not be ready for these, like these avant-garde from an ingredient perspective otherwise. And the second is what they understand, right? So you have to build awareness and you have to build taste.
Definitely.
So as a restaurant becomes increasingly hard. So which is why I think we also as a Malayali restaurant, we're fairly safe right now, and we've not been able to kind of.
Yeah. In fact, even when I left Zambar also was purely for some of these reasons, because you get into a rut.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not doing something new. It's that same thing going on and on. So when I got into catering, that was again nice for me because, we were doing a lot of very intimate caterings in the sense 8 people, 10 people, sit down.
So you can control.
And then the people there just said, we leave it to you. You bring us the food and let's. So, we could explain to them what the food was. And then at the same time, there was a satisfaction of recreating a dish, which is appreciated.
So we actually recently did at the restaurant, we did like a toddy shop concert, which was basically trying to pull dishes
all that
from different types of toddy sauce. We did quail, we did duck, we did crab. And these are not traditionally ingredients. Crab maybe was really popular, but these are ingredients that would traditionally be like super popular. But when we were given the opportunity to say that, okay, you tell us, here's a green canvas on that sort. I will end with this one. Like I'll probably start with this. If there is, since you said you traveled a lot also in Wayanad, if so far in what you've discovered, if there was one South Indian, like a forgotten Kerala dish, if you may, that you wish people knew about, you wish people would be able to eat more of. It could be on the Sunday, it could be otherwise, it could be anything.
There are couple of dishes which actually I discovered from these areas. It's like a sambar which is made with the turmeric flour.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something which we have lost.
What region is this from?
You'd again get it from towards the Wayanad side.
Understood.
They used to make it. And, turmeric again was something that grew in all the tarawads and things like that. So they could use that flour. So then it was used in sambar. Or even, during the mango season, the kernel of the mango, we tend to just throw it away. But there are a couple of dishes which actually people cooked with this.
This is the large mango, right?
The
Oh my God.
So to be able to, get some of these dishes perhaps back into.
And it's probably literally the vegetarian version of nose to tail, if you may. You're not really like getting rid of.
And actually even when I was cooking with the tribals, they use the stone crab. The small, the little fellows, which are in flowing streams. And the way they cooked it, with just your bird chili and just a little bit of.
Because I guess over there, oil was not a medium that was available.
So these are, dishes which I think what I'd like to concentrate.
Interesting. Yeah. On that note, I'm going to ask you some. It's called a quick rapid fire game.
Okay, that is the most difficult.
But it's neither quick. It's not a rapid fire. There's no fire involved. But because you are a chef, the proposition is this. I'm just going to throw you a couple of ingredients.
Yeah.
Quickly, first thing that comes to your mind.
As long as you don't ask me to cook.
No, yeah, but what would you cook, right? Like in this imaginary world, you can't cook it. What would it be, right? Yeah. So I'll start with an easy one. Tamarind. Quick one.
Well, it would be sambar, I guess, or rasam.
Okay. Coconut.
I'll go back to Khalid.
Raw mango.
It will be.
Actually, it could be ripe mango also. Sure.
Yeah, manga kutan, the small mango.
Is it
we do the full mango.
The brine one?
With the coconut milk.
With the coconut milk, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. small mango.
Curry leaves. I know this is white, but still.
Yeah, actually, curry leaves may be what I is a what we call the curry leaf chicken. There's a chicken.
Curry chicken.
Yeah,
This is, but that's a. I didn't,
actually it comes from Karnataka.
that's right. I didn't know. I didn't know it was a thing till I think my mother discovered it on some radio show.
Actually, we kind of discovered it. It was my wife and me were traveling through Mysore, and we stopped. The driver stopped at a particular place, and he said, "You must have this."
The curry chicken.
So after having that, I've come back home and kind of mastered the key.
I love the dish. So interestingly, the first time she made it, people are just like, as in people at home were baffled. Like you've taken something that people throw out from the dish, and you've done something. What's going on? Like yeah, but it's
lovely.
Curry leaf chicken. You must try it. It's great.
Yeah.
Banana, ripe or raw?
I think the raw banana, the kayo peri, which I do, which I love because yeah.
Ghee, may it.
Parupu, which is served at the Onam Sadhya, yeah.
Red rice is red rice.
Red rice.
Murika, like
I guess it'll go into the sambar, is what I've done.
got it.
Yeah.
Chakka, jackfruit.
Would be that chakka pradava.
Got it. Turmeric.
Turmeric goes into a lot of things. I guess I'll use it as basically a kind of a cleanser in most of the dishes.
Yeah, just because you did all this vegetarian, I know that you make incredible non-vegetarian also. Other than the curry leaf chicken, tell me one non-vegetarian dish that Chef Arun would pin his life for.
The gunpowder prawns.
Oh, and these are the sea prawns, the fat ones. Yeah, excellent choice. All right, yeah, it's interesting that you eat gunpowder because this is the PODIcast. And with that, sir, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great
for having us here. Once again, guys, book is Feast on a Leaf, which tells you exactly how to make all those 30 things that Chef Arun was talking about. Thank you so much for being here.
nice. Lovely.